Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Embrace the Gridiron. We got a lot to talk about in this episode, so we're going to play the music and get right into it. I'd like to welcome Nicholas back to this episode. We're on episode 3, guys, and we're going to have some fun. We got a lot of great things to talk about. The first thing is, Nick, you want to talk about some breaking news coming out?
Yeah, we got a bit of a breaking news this evening. So Antonio Brown is in the news again, but hold on, it's not for anything bad. Sources say from ESPN, Adam Schefter, that the Seattle Seahawks look like they're going to make a push to sign Brown after his suspension has been concluded. So if he gets signed to anybody, he will be eligible to play Week 10. Now, not Week 9 because his suspension ends at the end of Week 8, and he needs a 6-day grace period before he can join a team.
Do you think he could be a key contributor to the Seattle Seahawks this season as they make a push? They're looking like the best team in the NFC currently right now.
Yeah, I think they're the best team in the NFC. One thing I will say is he is definitely not a big need for them. They do have Tyler Lockett, Greg Olsen, Will Dissly, and of course DK Metcalf, who is an absolute animal. But he's not a great need. They more need a defensive back. But if Wilson wants him, and we all kind of know through social media that Wilson is a big driving force between this move happening.
Yeah, get him some extra weapons. I hope it doesn't affect DK Metcalf's fantasy stats for me. Dude's killing it right now. The other breaking news that happened earlier this afternoon is Odell Beckham Jr. banned from LSU for 2 years for giving money on the field during the national championship after the celebration. Now, this story first kind of broke back in January, right after the championship game. Everybody was talking about it. And then they came out and said it was fake $100 bills. It wasn't actual $100 bills. Everybody was kind of like, yeah, sure. It wasn't $100 bills. But it's a self-imposed punishment by LSU to try to avoid NCAA violations from having the hammer brought down on them. Now, there's two sides to this argument. One, this is no big deal. As Nick and I on our past iterations of the podcasts always talk about, the way the NCAA system works is kind of broken. But at the same time, if you're going to have these rules, you got to run them to the same extent, treat every team the same way. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And I mean, I think it was great for the players to get something like that. So I hope none of the players get in trouble. But it's really this whole thing of whether the players can make money or just the schools. And it's a whole complicated debate that we just don't have enough time to talk about today. But that's just some breaking news coming out. Nick, what's your quick opinion on this story?
Yeah, LSU had to do it. They didn't want to mess up any of their players' eligibility. Odell, he played in the NCAA. He should know better, but clearly he didn't. So,
I mean, the big thing, interesting thing that's going to that I'm excited or interested to see what happens is Odell's is really important to LSU recruiting. He helps out a lot when it comes to recruiting. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they could still, I'm guessing they're still going to pull top rated wide receivers, but whether they're going to be able to sway them as much without Odell's help. Now, going into this week of college football recap, didn't I call it? Auburn upset by South Carolina. And very interesting game, back and forth game, but South Carolina finally pulls out a top 25 win this season on their third try. The big upset of the week that no one, unless you're a Florida State fan, really saw coming was Florida State upsetting the University of North Carolina. North Carolina was supposed to be the team next to possibly Notre Dame to compete with Clemson in the ACC. And now it's going to be interesting to see how they come back from this loss. They were down by a lot. They got down quick, but they came back towards the end of the game and just fell up short. So it was really interesting to see. What are your opinions on this upset, Nick?
When I looked at the score at the end of the first half, I was like blown away. And I said to a couple of friends of mine, I'm like, this is classic FSU. They're gonna blow this game, and they almost did blow the game. In the end, but looks like UNC might have been a pretender. I mean, a lot of people were a little skeptical of them being that high right off the bat, but they lost a game they can't lose that game. There's a few games a season where a team that's spiraling out of control and a program that's been spiraling out of control for a little while now in FSU, you need to win that game, and they didn't show up in the first half. And even though they showed up more in the second half, it didn't matter. They dug themselves in such a hole they couldn't get out of it.
Yeah, Sam Howell got the team going in the second half. Mac Brown got the team going, but I don't think Mac Brown has a win against Florida State, which is his alma mater, at all in his career. Is it 0-4 or 0-5?
Yeah, I actually think it's like 0-8 or 0-9 at this point.
Oh my God.
They were talking about it on ESPN. Yeah. It's just, it was not a good performance at all.
It'll be interesting to see how they rebound, because what happens the week after? How do you rebound? Are you a real championship contender team? I was one of the people that looked at Sam Howell, Mac Brown, and said, okay, they have a real possibility. And me and friend of the channel, Blake Ashley, were talking about how North Carolina and Clemson were the top two teams in the ACC. And then later that night, we're like, well, that text didn't age well. So it shocked a lot of people. And the last game I want to talk about is the Alabama-Georgia game, which I was, once again, completely wrong about. Now, Nick Saban was able to get the 3 consecutive pass tests after he tested positive, and was actually able to be on the sideline for that game. And having Saban back had to be energizing for Alabama. And Alabama pulls away in the second half of that game and just runs away with the game. Mac Jones looked good. Stetson Bennett struggled in the second half. Like I said in the team previews for the previous week about how Tennessee was going to be able to upset Georgia, it was going to be getting to Stetson Bennett and putting the pressure on Stetson Bennett, and that's exactly what they did. Nick, what were some of your takeaways with this game?
So in the first half, it kind of looked like Georgia had decent control up until that whole long review and walking into the locker room and everything like that. But it looked like they had control, and the one thing that was going to make them win this game is if Stetson Bennett held onto the football. And unfortunately, he threw 2 interceptions in the second half, and Alabama ran away with it. Like you said, Mac Jones looks really, really good. I was not expecting him to be this dynamic so early on, but really it was about turnovers. They also could not limit the big play. I mean, they got beat over the top pretty badly. So it was a bit of a surprise. We were both genuinely surprised. We thought the running game would have been slowed down for Alabama's run game, but the Georgia defense couldn't slow that down either. I mean, he had 100 yards, the star back, Harris. He played very well. So, the things Georgia needed to do to win, they didn't do in the second half at all.
Jalen Waddle. It looks NFL GMs must be super excited to get that guy on their team. Thought Henry Ruggs was quick and fast. Oh my God, Jalen Waddle looked crazy on that 90-yard, I think it was 90-yard passing touchdown, where he just goes straight down the field and runs away with it. Now that brings us into the Heisman Watch. Now we really haven't been able to talk much about the Heisman. Caesar actually just released their Heisman odds. It goes Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Jalen Waddle, Kyle Trask, Najee Harris, Shane Buechele, Garrett King, Travis Etienne, and Stetson Bennett. Now, are there any surprises on this top 10 odds at quarterback? I mean, not at quarterback, for Heisman. Does anybody surprise you? Buechele, when I researched him for the Who Is series, I thought he could be in conversation, but I wasn't expecting this early his odds to be this high. What are your takeaways from this?
It's funny. I was not expecting Waddle to be this good. He was the one guy. I'm looking at the odds released, and I'm like, this guy's here, man, and he's not going anywhere. He was a huge surprise to me. One name I'm actually not surprised with is Kyle Trask. The guy has just been he's been in unfortunate quarterback rooms where there's been a lot of talent, and he hasn't been able to showcase it. But he's showcasing it now, and he is he's looking like he's the real deal. Trevor Lawrence is no surprise, and we mentioned it before. Mac Jones looks good. I want to know how Justin Fields is going to do this year. A lot of people have really high expectations, and some people think that he's not going to be good this year. So, this all these odds they're interesting, but I think it really comes down to the top 3 to 4 guys who really have a solid chance of winning. I think Lawrence, if he takes any sort of step back at all, it won't take as much from one of these other guys to win the Heisman.
I mean, Lawrence looked amazing this weekend. Just in that first half, over 400 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and looked human with an interception. And he just had to not look too crazy. He's got to make it past the Jets in the NFL draft at this point.
They're fitting him for a helmet at this point.
Which is really that conversation of Trevor Lawrence to the Jets, and why I get why if you're Trevor Lawrence, you wouldn't want to go to the Jets, but that first round money, man, from the first overall pick to like the 5th overall pick, the pay grade just drops. Who's your pick for the Heisman right now? If you had to pick today, place your bet today with these odds.
If I have to pick today, I actually am going to pick, call me crazy, and I'm not a UF football fan, but I think Kyle Trask has a really good chance. I feel like if they win games, and the only way they win games is if it's on his back, I personally think. And if they win a lot of games and they make themselves a top 5, top 6 seed at the end of the year, he could be the Heisman. I mean, I think it's too easy to say Trevor Lawrence here. I really quietly like Kyle Trask to take this one home.
I would have agreed with you, except the way Mac Jones has been performing is above and beyond what anybody expected him to do. Now, we showed flashes of this last year, and there in the Who Is video I did of him, I showed the statistics of had he had a full season, what his stats would have looked like. And if you actually looked at that, it would have made more sense. But Mac Jones is my number 1 pick. I got to go Justin Fields, probably number 2. With Trevor Lawrence is my 3rd. If I had to pick today, along with the odds, and Mac Jones wasn't supposed to win this starting job in a lot of people's opinions. And not only has he won this job, he's got it locked down. And all of a sudden, I was looking at an ESPN article talking about NFL draft risers. Mac Jones is quickly rising up the board. He wasn't supposed to be in this position, but the hard work and what he's been able to do. Granted, he's got Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and some fantastic talent around him. But he's still putting up insane numbers. He's got 2 interceptions, I believe, on the season, one of which was a tip pass. I missed the one against Georgia because I started that game late as I was getting everything set up. But he's not turning the ball over. He's putting up multiple 400-yard games, I believe, this season, if not just 350-plus yard games this season. And he's looking like a top-notch quarterback. Now, I won't discount Justin Fields at all or take Justin Fields out of the conversation. I'm really excited to see what he does this weekend, and that should be fun. And to move into that, let's talk about some Big Ten football. I am so excited to have Badger football back. I was heartbroken when they canceled the season, and I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. It's my senior year. I was excited to go to games. I didn't go to the last home game against Purdue last year thinking, I got all next season. Don't make that mistake, kids. If you want to go have one last great time at your college football stadium, don't push it off till next time, because things like everything going on in the world might just happen. Now, all of a sudden, I don't get to, although the game's being played at Camp Randall, I don't get to be in Camp Randall. But I'm really worried about the Big Ten right now. And Nick, you want to know why I'm really worried? 8 weeks for 8 games. And you're already seeing Michigan is, I think, at a stay-at-home order. Wisconsin's exploding with cases, and Minnesota won't say the amount of players that have tested positive on their team. What's going to happen if you can't play a game? I guess you'd probably forfeit it. But what if, let's say, a team like Ohio State is 5-3, and those 3 losses are due to forfeits? What's the committee going to do?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is,
that's tough.
This is why I think there's got to be an actual leader and not just the conference heads. Now, the conference heads are never going to give up the power that they have, the Power 5 conference heads. But you need some type of group of people to take control of this and put everybody on the same schedule. And the NCAA football committee belonged making the playoffs bigger this year. Oregon's going to play 6 games. If they go undefeated, they're 6-0, and a team like Clemson drops one game out of nowhere and is 9-1, and it comes down to that final playoff spot. Are you going to give the 9-1 team or the 6-0 team the nod for the playoffs? I don't think that's going to happen, but what do? Alabama goes 8-2 and wins the SEC, or Florida and wins the SEC, and they got a 6-0 Oregon, or a 5-0 Ohio State because 3 games got postponed. What are you going to do? And as a fan, I am so excited to see how the committee gets to sweat this year. I hope they have to sweat. I hope it's not due to games being canceled. I hope that does not need to come in conversation, and that the Big Ten's got a great strategy going for this, and the Pac-12 as well. But I hope they have to sweat due to the different scheduling and how they weigh everything, and just hearing fan bases cry out of what is going on. But I'm really worried for the 8 games in 8 weeks. And I hope the Big Ten's able to do it. I mean, they already have egg on their face after canceling the season and then a month later reinstating it, and then really pushing it to where it is now and having the 8 weeks and 8 games. So that's my biggest worry. I don't know what your opinions of the worry of the Big Ten with 8 games in 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's going to be I have a feeling fans are going to be pretty angry of some of these either non-Power 5 conferences, or they're just going to be really mad because we all know how the poll bias is. We all know how it is, right? And I mean, look at the polls right now. There was no reason that the Big Ten should have been ranked anywhere in the polls. I don't care. They didn't play a game yet. I don't care. There was no reason they should have been in there. Other teams deserve to be in there instead of the Big Ten. Now, that set a precedent that we know that there might be some forfeits. There might be some canceled games, postponements, and we're still going to consider these teams some of the best in the nation, even though they have 3 to 4, maybe even 5 less games played than some of these other programs. So the way this is shaping out, I can absolutely see, let's say Ohio State goes 6-2, and you got a non-Power 5 conference team having 1 loss. They're going to give it to Ohio State, and it's not even going to be close. Now, depending on that team's resume, whatever it is, okay, it might make sense. However, if that team has played 10 games, and let's say Ohio State had 1 canceled and they were 6-1, I think that 3-game difference is the 3 to 4 game difference is huge. I just personally, I don't think they started this off doing it the right way when it came to adding them into the polls and ranking them already, because they didn't play a game yet. I mean, I know we have opinions about preseason polls that not everybody agree with. I don't think there should be preseason polls because you haven't seen anybody play yet. But the way it's shaping out, the way it's panning out is, I think there's going to be big controversy with one of these final playoff seeds.
It's going to be an exciting season. It's going to be an interesting season. And I just hope, for the players' sake, they're able to make it through safely and get some of these guys into the NFL draft that need that extra film. Now, luckily, like we mentioned previously on the podcast, they're freezing eligibility this season. So if they can't, it's not like the players automatically lose a year of eligibility. But it's a crazy time. Now, I'm going to mention my East and West predictions, but I'm scared to mention this. Based off of the rant I went on Wisconsin sports last week. I hope this doesn't come back to bite me. So in the East, Nick, would you like to hear about the East?
I would love to hear about the East. Let's hear it. Rutgers is number one, right?
Yeah, Ohio State winning the East. Penn State coming in second. I think that Ohio State-Penn State game in the middle of the season is going to decide the winner of the East. Michigan State, Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers. Now, I know it's a hot take to put Rutgers in last. I really know that's a really hot take. The West was a little more complicated. Partly because I didn't want to put my school as the top team, because anytime we're expected at the preseason to do really well, you have an 8-5 season like we had a few years ago. But at the same time, when you look at the roster Wisconsin has, who they're returning on defense, and yeah, you got to replace Jonathan Taylor, and yeah, you won't have Jack Cohn, and Quintus Cephas is gone. You got Danny Davis. You have Graham Mertz replacing Cohn, which a lot of people thought Graham Mertz should have won the starting job last year. Shout outs to everybody looking at that video recently. That was a fun video for us to make. And you got Groshek, not Harris. I'm blanking on our sophomore running back. But then Berger, who's another Jersey running back, coming in to replace Taylor. I don't know if it's going to be a one-horse back or if it's going to be a running back by committee. The Badgers know how to produce offensive line. They know how to run the ball. Graham Mertz is the only question mark, and I'm actually really excited to see what he does on Friday. So, if I didn't make that obvious, I got Wisconsin winning the West, followed by Minnesota, followed by Iowa, and then Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is one of those teams you never know what you're going to get. They could really contend if they wanted to, but I don't think this is the year. Scott Frost was expected to turn this program around in 2 years. He hasn't done that yet. But I don't see Nebraska doing that this season either, especially when you have the opening game you have already in week 1. Followed behind Nebraska, I got Illinois, Purdue, and Northwestern wrapping up the Big Ten West. Nick, who are your West and East predicted winners?
So, it's funny because I do have the same predicted winners. I do have Ohio State and Wisconsin. Now, I want to go to the East for a second here. And, you had Ohio State, Penn State, and then Michigan. And the big thing about Michigan to me is, are they going to do the same thing they do every year? Excite us, and then lose one game they shouldn't, and then lose to Ohio State to completely knock themselves out. Is that what they're going to do again? Probably, because Harbaugh can't win that game. Frankly, he can't win that game. I don't know what it is. At this point, it's in his head. He's just not winning that game. And that's going to decide 1, 2, and 3. I agree with your 1, 2, and 3, however. I do agree it will be Ohio State, Penn State, and then Michigan. But the question is Michigan going to win that game? Because every year, they're beating Ohio State away from the playoffs, pretty much. They're that close almost every year. And the fact of the matter is they always lose to Ohio State and then lose one more game that they shouldn't have. And then they blow their chances at a great bowl game or, even making the playoffs. So, yeah, I do agree. And the West is kind of like, I don't want to say it's more clear cut, but you kind of have the top two with Wisconsin and Minnesota. And then the bottom shelf, they all fall into place. I mean, Iowa in recent years has not won a lot of big games. They're known for producing great NFL tight ends. However, that's pretty much all they're known for in recent years because they haven't really put forth the season that you want to see from Iowa. They put in maybe back end top 25 seasons, and then they fall out of it at the end some of the time. And they haven't been as great as a team. And I think, like you said, Northwestern's going to be battling for the bottom again. Really, and and all these teams, they're not. I think there's 5 teams you really have to worry about in the Big Ten, and it's Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And I really do think the top 2 are pretty clean cut, and it's Ohio State and Wisconsin.
Yeah, the most interesting thing to see what goes on is the Penn State-Michigan game. Michigan also pulled Wisconsin in their schedule, and they got Ohio State. So they play 3 of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, which is why I think they finished 3rd in the Big Ten East. I don't see them beating Ohio State. Penn State should be interesting, but I really don't see them beating Wisconsin now. That might be Wisconsin bias, but at the same time, it's hard to see Wisconsin losing to Penn State. I mean, not Penn State, Michigan. And as I sat last night, I was thinking about this, as I was thinking about the segments we were going to talk about. And I kind of pull something from the Big 12 and relate Michigan kind of to Texas. Now, I know I'm going to get, people are probably going to get very angry at this take if you're watching on the replay. But Michigan and Texas every year are always hyped up as this could be their year. This could be the year they either go over Oklahoma or they go over Ohio State. And it never happens. They lose to the rival, or they lose some games they're not supposed to lose. And I think Harbaugh is a better coach than Herman. I'm not saying Herman's a better coach than Harbaugh. Harbaugh is most likely, just look at his track record at Stanford. Look at him in the NFL. He's able to create winners. But it's still hard to see how the way the media builds everything up, Texas and Michigan are a lot on the same standard of what's been going on over the past few years. Now, I think Michigan is in a better spot than Texas, but it's just something that's going to be interesting to see if whether this is their year or whether they fall off towards the end or lose to Wisconsin, Penn State, and Ohio State. There's 3 games that could decide their season. And that's not even including a possible upset at some point down the road. They open their season against Minnesota on Saturday. I'm sorry, they play 4 of the best Big Ten teams. Now I want to get into some game predictions for the Big Ten, or for this week in college football. And due to the theme of being a Big Ten preview, we're going to talk Big Ten football schedule this year, or this week. And the first game I want to talk about is the game that kicks off on Friday. Illinois at Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's 20-point favorites. And the over-under is 51. Now, as much as I don't want to pick against my Badgers, I think Wisconsin wins this game. But that 20-point favorite worries me a little. Wisconsin's known to come out a little slow in the first half of all their games and not run away with it as much when it comes to the important games. And I do consider this an important game. It's the season opener. It's Graham Mertz's first game as a starter. And it's a revenge game from last year after getting upset by Illinois last year. So it hurts. But I think Illinois keeps it within 20. Wisconsin pulls it out. I also think this probably will stay under the under as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I agree with you on the point that they're not going to win by 20 points. I think obviously they're going to win the game. Well, that's not obvious, but I think they're going to win the game. No game obvious, win or lose. But yeah, no, I don't like the minus 20. I think they'll win by 14, 13, somewhere in that area. I don't think they're going to win by 20 points unless, like you said, unless Graham Mertz walks out there, lights the entire field on fire. I think it's going to be like a 14-point game. And, the over-under is 51, and I kind of see this game going over, actually. But I see it being like maybe 30 to, it's somewhere in that range, 30, 23 to like 20 something, somewhere in that kind of area where they just go over. That's why I think that's actually a perfect over under if you were going to set it. But yeah, I definitely look for Wisconsin to beat them by 2 scores, 2 possessions, double digits, but 20 is a stretch for me.
Yeah, moving on to the next game is also another interesting one. Not based off of who's probably going to win this game. I think Ohio State runs away with this game. But in a first game of the week or first game of the season, at 26-point favorites after the offseason everybody's had, I think Ohio State wins this by 24. I don't think it's by 26. And I do see the over going in this game. So I'm the over under 67.5. Ohio State's 26-point favorites. I'm taking Nebraska at plus 26, and I'm taking the over in this game.
Okay, so I agree with Nebraska plus 26. However, I'm going to say something, okay? I think that Ohio State might not be on upset alert, but there is a chance that it finally clicks for Nebraska. Finally. And things start to fall in place. And Ohio State might be not underestimating their opponent, but thinking this is a week we're going to win. So, let's not go and prepare as much as we need to. And Nebraska might punch them in the mouth. You really don't know what's going to happen here. I would actually go with the under here because I don't think Ohio State's going to kill Nebraska. Now, this game's going to be medium-ish scoring. I'm thinking, like, what's the over-under? Is it, what did you say? What was 60?
67.5.
67.5. Yeah, I think this is going to be like maybe a 28-31 or something like that. For some reason, I don't see this going. I just don't have that gut feeling that this is going to be like a super, super high-scoring game. Now, it's going to be a high-scoring game by any standards, but I don't know if it goes past 67. It might be 34-31 or something like that. And I do think this game is going to be close. I would take the plus on Nebraska because honestly, anytime there's a spread when it comes to your 26-point favorites, that's kind of ridiculous. So personally, I also, again, like I said, I think Ohio State might come in and we're like, oh, we're Ohio State. We got Justin Fields. We're great. But they may get punched in the mouth. You really don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the time where it starts to click for Nebraska, but it could.
I don't think Ohio State's going to come out sleepwalking at the beginning of this game. With the amount of NFL talent, with a quarterback like Justin Fields, if they had a brand new quarterback coming in, I could kind of see that. But I think Day and Fields are going to get this team ready to go, and they're going to be rolling. I could see this being 49-28 as a final score. The next game, Rutgers at Michigan State. There's no over-under for this game last time I checked, but Michigan State is 13.5-point favorites. It's hard to choose Rutgers in any close game against anybody in the Big Ten. But at the same time, with everything going on, you don't know what to expect. With the delayed start of the season, it's hard to choose these double-digit favorites in these games, but I feel like Michigan State's going to win this by 2 touchdowns exactly. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I have a very similar view. But let's not forget though, when it comes to Rutgers, that Shiano is now there, and it's going to take a couple years for him to get the right people in the building. It's going to take a couple years for him to, do everything he needs to do to get his program the way he wants it. Right now, I still would hold over from previous regimes, and players that might not fit his exact vision or scheme. They're still not going to be a great team. I think they're going to be a better coach team. I think 14 points is a very fair prediction, John. I think 14 is about where this game should be at. However, don't be surprised in the near future if Rutgers starts being a little more competitive. Now, are they going to win? No. But are they going to be more competitive? Are they going to show up in some of these games? I think so. Under a new coaching staff, which this coach, he's been here and he's proved that he can win here. So that is something I will look forward to in the future. However, there's still holdover from prior scouting classes and players that might not fit his vision but have to play. So I definitely do think that they're not going to win this game, and I think 14 points is actually a perfect prediction of the difference in this one.
The one thing I will say to finish up talking about this game is for the first time in a while, there's some excitement around Rutgers football. For the first time, probably since Shiano left. So that'll be, well, I guess Kyle Flood got them to a few games right before they joined the Big Ten. Since the first time they joined the Big Ten, there's a lot of excitement around the program. It's going to take a while. I think it's going to be right off the bat, and I don't think they're even going to be close in a lot of games this season, but there's going to be a lot of learning throughout this season. Next game, Penn State as 6.5-point favorites at Indiana. The over-under is 59.5. I'm taking Penn State at -6.5.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah, I think this one's kind of clear cut. Penn State is they're supposed to be good this year, and frankly, I usually Penn State starts the season usually pretty hot anyway. They don't come sleeping out of the gate, and at -6.5, I think it's a pretty good number. I have them winning personally by about 10 to 14 during this week's matchup.
I'm going to take the under though on this game. I don't see it getting into the 30 to 30 type of range. I think it might be something like 28 to 14. Especially with Penn State replacing their starting running back who might be out for the season. Iowa as 3-point favorites at Purdue, 54.5. I'm taking the under because it's Iowa defense. Yeah, I'm going to go with the under. And I'm also going to take Iowa, although they have a lot of controversy going on with their program right now with former players. I think Iowa wins this game by 3 points, especially because Purdue might not have their head coach on the sideline this week.
Right, and that all for me, my pick kind of bounces out on what the head coach is on the sideline this week because I would take Purdue +3. I think they're either going to win this game or cover the spread. I just have this kind of gut feeling with Purdue. I agree with the under. I do think defenses are going to show up big time in this game, and it's gonna lay down to. I think it's going to come down to a final drive either way, but I personally think Purdue is going to win this game.
I think Rondell Moore of Purdue will decide how this game goes. If he comes out hot, then I think you might be right. But it's hard to pick against Iowa in games like these. They don't lose games. I'm sticking with Iowa. Next one not on the list because I want to finish off with the game of the week where ESPN's at. But Maryland at Northwestern. Northwestern's 11-point favorites. The over-under's 55.5. I'm taking Maryland +11. I could see them upsetting Northwestern in this game. And I'm taking the over in this game. I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense. Yes, Northwestern returns Patty Fisher, but I don't see this. I could see like a 42 to 35 point game to start the season.
Yeah, we went over this a little bit.
Quarterback.
Yeah, we went over this a little bit earlier. And I mentioned that Maryland always scores a lot of points in the beginning of the season, and they usually start off like hot, and they're like, "Oh, is this Maryland?" And then they go away as usual. But I agree with you there. I like Maryland to even win this game. I think the line is a little skewed against Maryland here, and I think I would definitely smash them where they are in the spread.
And then the last game where College Game Day is the most interesting game of Big Ten play, in my opinion, of the week. Michigan, who's 3-point favorites at Minnesota. Nick, I gotta think about this one. I've been trying to think about this one all day. I'm gonna let you take the first crack at this.
All right, yeah. So this is one I've been thinking about too, Michigan, Minnesota. And I want to say, Michigan's gonna win. Like, I want to say Michigan's going to win, but then I also remember Michigan likes to pretend and then fizzle out at the end. Is this the year that Michigan is off the bat not looking good? It's hard to decide. I think I'm going to take Michigan to actually win this game, and I think Minnesota will bounce back in a huge way to get them, in conference, hype and talks and like, are they a good enough team? But you know what? I think actually they're going to pull this one out. I honestly see this being a last drive, last second field goal sort of game. So I'm not really sure where it will lay in the point spread, but I think three is an excellent number for this game. And -3, I probably wouldn't bet on -3 personally because I think if this is going to come down to the last second field goal, it's going to be at 3. So again, it's going to be at 3. They're going to be up by 2 or up by 1. So I would take Minnesota plus 3. However, I think Michigan will win this game.
I think Michigan will win this game too. I also can't pick Minnesota due to being a Badger fan. That X game every year. You can't choose Minnesota. I know one of the long snappers on the team, but I'm sorry, man. I'm choosing Michigan in this game at more than 3. I don't think it's going to go over, though. I think this is going to be like a 28 to 21 point game. How do you feel about that?
I actually think this, call me crazy, this might go over. Like I said, I think it's going to be a field goal game. And this game, they might start off, defensively, hitting on all cylinders and slow, and it might pick up later. I'm going to go with the over on this one. And I really think this is, like I said, it's going to be like a 28 to 31 or 34 to 37, something in the range of 3 points is really what I look at. And I think I could see them late in the game trading scores back and forth. So I'm going to take the over on this.
Now let's move into some NFL news, some controversy down in Miami. Tua Tagovailoa is taking over the starting quarterback job for the Miami Dolphins. This news sort of came out of nowhere this week. You got to feel for a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's heartbroken over the situation. He's been playing really well. They have him in possible playoff contention. Is this a good move for Miami, or is this what are you doing type of move?
Okay, so I'm going to parallel this to a situation that happened 16 years ago. So 16 years ago, after 9 games, the Giants were in playoff contention, and Kurt Warner was their quarterback. And, they were in a good spot, but at the time, the Giants drafted that year Eli Manning, with their first pick, and they traded a lot to get him. And, when you have the heir apparent, the one that you've been tanking for, tank for Tua, the whole thing, you're going to have to play him eventually. And the Dolphins are in a good enough spot where they're like, wow, we really are competitive. We are a competitive team who beat up on the NFC champion last year. And, we have a legitimate chance to do something this year. I have no problem with this move. It stinks for Fitzpatrick. Okay. I'm going to put that out there. He's had 4 games with multiple touchdown passes this year. He has a total of, 10 touchdowns on the season. He has limited turnovers. All around, he's been really good. Even, how Fitzpatrick is. He's even rushing for touchdowns. He's got 2 rushing touchdowns on the year. You love the guy because he gives you heart and soul in every single play. You tell me, John, watching Ryan Fitzpatrick play is an absolute joy. It's a joy. The guy's 34 years old. He gives it his all. He's diving. He's not sliding. He's running into he's trucking people. He's a joy to watch. However, I think this is the right move for the organization. And it's really sad because I know how disappointed he was with this whole move. But in the end, it was the best thing for the organization. And are they going to keep him on? I'm sure they'll keep him on. But this does give the organization a little leverage. Now, if I'm the Dolphins, I'm saying, hey, we're starting Tua. What can you give us, Dallas, for Ryan Fitzpatrick? Because, Dallas is in a predicament we're going to get to. But, really, I think this is the best move for their organization, for their franchise. And I think it sets them up for meaningful football in December. And, not that Fitzpatrick can't do it. We know we've seen him do it. However, oftentimes with Fitzpatrick, he throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then the next week you get 150 and 4 picks. So I know he wasn't playing bad this year. However, this was the right move, and it was the time to make the move. With the bye week, they got a week until they play the Rams. I know everyone's like, oh, Aaron Donald. Whatever. It doesn't matter. This was the right move for them and for the team and for the organization.
Here's the message this sends to me. It sends the message that the Dolphins don't want to be contending this year. They're sitting at this point where Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins roster was not constructed to be here at this point with the complete rebuild they've been at. And they said, oh, whoa, hold up. Oh, hold the phone. We're not ready to be competing for the playoffs this year. We want a relatively good NFL draft pick to continue to surround our young quarterback. or help the defense. So we're gonna see what happens. And if we win some games, great. But if we lose, that's all right. That's the message it sends to me from the Dolphins. Now I get Tua was coming in at some point, and I knew Fitzpatrick's gonna fall off like he always does. And I also do agree that I could see him getting traded with a lot of the injuries going around, especially the Cowboys' prime destination. It just seems too early and too out of nowhere. So, but speaking of the Cowboys, let's talk about the battle for the least, or the NFC least. Nick, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, once again, the NFC East decided we're going to lose. We're all going to lose. Though, two teams playing each other in the NFC East, you can't lose. Both of them can't lose. Well, almost. So, let's go back to this week. So, Baltimore went into Philly, and they beat them by a score of 30-28. And Baltimore, Philly showed some life towards the end of this game. Now, they were up 17-0. Baltimore was really dominating. It was 24-7, I think, at one point. And Philly ended up losing basically on a missed 2-point conversion after scoring a touchdown and losing by 2 points. Now, Philly showed some greatness in that game, but it came at a cost. Philly loses Zach Ertz for 3 to 4 weeks with an ankle injury, and they lose Miles Sanders for this week in its upcoming matchup against the Giants. Miles Sanders should be back next week. They kind of said it was kind of like something that he would have been a game-time decision on Sunday, but however, since the game is on Thursday, he's not going to play. That was Philly this week. Dallas got absolutely embarrassed on Monday night. Arizona made them look like they were a college football team. Andy Dalton looked scared, uneven. The Dallas Cowboys line is obliterated with injuries. Both their tackles and their left guard are on injured reserve. Their center has been replaced this year, considering, Travis Frederick, great longtime Dallas Cowboy, had to retire due to an illness, which is really sad. And Zach Martin left the game with a concussion. Now, that was really bad. And Zeke fumbling twice. They're not going to win games when Zeke turns the ball over. Now, Zeke fumbled twice. The offense looked bad. The defense was way, way more of the story. And there's even things coming out of the Dallas locker room that, they don't believe in their coaches. The coaches have them unprepared. They're not ready to play. It's a very, very bad. First of all, you don't want anything leaking out of the locker room. Second of all, that leaking out is really, really bad, considering if they don't feel like they're ready to go, there's an obvious problem here. So they're not believing in their defensive coaching staff. They're not believing in the defensive coaches. That is something that needs to be fixed if they want to win anything. Like we mentioned before, if they don't believe in Dalton, and Miami's made it clear they're not going back to Fitzpatrick, you said you might have to call them up. Hey, listen, I'll give you a 4th round pick. Give me Ryan. And, they may charge a little more based on the way he played this year, but that might be the move the Cowboys have to make, because this division is winnable for anybody. Now we'll go to the Giants and the Redskins matchup this week, Giants and the Washington football team matchup this week. It's going to take a while to get over. So that game was a bit interesting. The Giants looked like they were dominating early, and there were some questionable things that they did in that game. The officiating was not great for either team. They did not really help the Washington football team early, and they were helping them a lot late in the game. The Giants won by a score of 20-19 off of a fumble return touchdown, and then an incomplete pass on a 2-point conversion by Washington. The way both these teams look, they don't look like they're ready for anything. Although I will say, so far this season, the Giants defense has looked very good, and it was a surprise considering they were supposed to not be a good team this year defensively. And offense, they're struggling. Jason Garrett clearly is not. It's like the same story that we saw in Dallas. Unproductive, predictable, just a gimmicky offense with no real striking power. Now, listen, it's a segment that we need to talk about the Giants healthy. We know the Giants are unhealthy. However, their offensive line is fully healthy. They have all their starters on the offensive line, but you lose Saquon Barkley, you lose Sterling Shepard, and Golden Tate's a shell of himself. It's something that, the Giants are going to struggle with. They're going to really struggle with this year. And back to Washington, really, Chase Young and company only got 5 pressures against Daniel Jones. He's the most pressured quarterback in the NFL. I mean, that can't happen when you have an offensive line full of first-round picks. But, it's going to come down to Thursday. The Giants play the Giants. I I believe, travel to Philadelphia on Thursday. And if you guys aren't familiar, the Giants have not beaten Philly in 7 different chances. So we really need to watch Thursday and see what team is going to win, what team is going to lose. Because if Washington beat the Giants last week, they would be in first place right now.
Yeah, I'll talk about that, what you just said, in a second. But Aiden, my prediction is going to be the Jets. We had someone, Aiden, comment, "What do you think is going to end up with the number 1 pick?" I'm going with the Jets. I'd put my money on the Jets.
Yeah, it's going to be the Jets. It's not even close. Like, they're not even trying. Like, you could tell they're not even trying. The Dolphins shut them out 24-0. The third string quarterback at the Broncos just demolished it. They're not trying. Gase doesn't care. The organization's in full tank mode, and it would just be comical if Trevor Lawrence said, I'm going to wait till next year.
Yeah, I'm going to stay. We got some extra years of eligibility. I'm going to work that off. But to finish off some of the points about the NFC East, ESPN came out saying the Eagles are projected to go 6-9-1 this season, and with that record have a 54% chance of winning the NFC East. The Giants shouldn't be in contention. The Washington football team shouldn't be in contention. It was supposed to be the Cowboys and Eagles as a possible contender with a winning record this season. Now, what Carson Wentz has been able to do with the lack thereof of wide receiving core, I think is impressive, because if you look at that injury list, it's like a whole starting lineup. So it's going to be interesting to see is once they get some of those people back, whether they could put it into second or third gear, because they're still in first gear. They shouldn't be in first gear right now. And Thursday's going to be really telling. And the talk of the town is, are the Giants the real contenders if they win the game? It'll be interesting to see. Now, next thing I want to talk about really quickly is Le'Veon on the Kansas City Chiefs. This one kind of surprised me. I kind of knew Le'Veon was a possibility for the Chiefs, but I didn't think it'd match up perfectly. Le'Veon wanted to have more production to get another bigger sum contract with his next team. And the Kansas City Chiefs had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's been putting up great numbers as a rookie. I thought it was going to be something like, go Badgers, Ryan Reed. I thought it was going to be something like the Patriots or the Dolphins possibly were in conversations. I didn't think the Chiefs were actually going to be able to pull this off, but they did, and their offense gets scarier.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little statistic right now, okay? And this is why I thought this was a great fit. So, the Kansas City Chiefs, before last week, because I don't know how this stat compiled last week, they had 9 rushes inside the 5-yard line, no touchdowns. Now that's a big, that's a big component to Edwards-Helaire being 5'7" and being a small running back. Now, what we know about Le'Veon Bell is a very patient runner. We know that, and we know that early in his career he was not the patient runner. He was the guy, I'm going to run you over. That was Le'Veon Bell out of college, and he still can do that. So I think the Jets really just didn't care. They didn't care for Le'Veon. It was very clear that Gase didn't want him there. And I think the Chiefs were a perfect fit because they needed somebody who can get that short rush without having to sneak Mahomes. Because you saw what happened last year. They sneaked Mahomes. He got hurt. And there was a whole you're paying $500 million for this guy. You're going to protect him. So give Le'Veon Bell the goal line carries. He'll do great with them. We saw years in Pittsburgh where he would take a wildcat on the goal line and find his way into the end zone. He's a bruiser, and I really think I always thought this was the perfect fit. And based on, listen, he's a really good running back, the kid Helaire, and I like him. He's a good kid. He's a good running back, very shifty, sturdy guy, but he's small, so he's going to struggle in those short yardage situations like that. And I think Bell is a perfect player for that.
Are you starting or sitting Le'Veon Bell in fantasy?
Oh, I'm not starting Le'Veon. I want nowhere near Le'Veon, okay? Until he plays the Jets. When he plays the Jets, I think he might have 150 and 4 touchdowns. Like, he's got to hate the Jets at this point. But realistically, I would not start Le'Veon Bell. We're in a kind of a wait-and-see mode because he's kind of a guy who, again, He's going to get goal line touches. That's where he belongs. But Hilaire's been playing some great football.
Yeah, and to close this out, we're going to talk a little more about fantasy in just 1 second. But what is your NFL game pick of the week?
So my NFL game pick of the week, and some people call me crazy for this, and it wasn't just you, John. And one of my buddies in the comments over there has been calling me crazy for this pick. I am taking the Detroit Lions plus 2.5 in Atlanta. And I'm doing this because I don't think Atlanta's that good. Well, we all know Atlanta's not that good. However, Atlanta put up a great performance last week. Sure, Dalvin Cook was gone, and Kirk Cousins looked like a shell of himself without Dalvin Cook. But I want to give a testament to Detroit this year. Week 1, they lost to the Bears in a game they should have won. Okay? They got destroyed by the Packers, but they were up 14 points. They were up by 14 points. They beat the Cardinals, which was a great game, and they outstruck the Cardinals in that one. And the week after, they played a very interesting game against New Orleans, and they lost, but they were up early, and they lost by 6 points. So it comes to show they're in these games close. They beat up on Jacksonville last week, and I kind of think they're actually going to win this game, and I think Matt Stafford is going to shred that secondary to pieces. They looked terrible last week against Cousins, who didn't even play well. Cousins did not play well. He had 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he played very poor football. So I really think Atlanta is going to struggle big time defensively. I have Kenny Golladay going crazy this week, Marvin Jones going crazy this week. Look at good old Danny Amendola, maybe even having a 100-yard game.
Yeah, I actually would have taken this pick because it's the Falcons this year. But I would have probably been on the same page. But since you took this pick, I was kind of left in a weird predicament. Considered the Rams over the Bears just because I can't choose the Bears. But I was like, that's a 50-50 game, especially Rams, I think, are 6.5-point favorites in that game. Looked at the Packers game. But the last time I chose the Packers last week, they lay a goose egg up and looked terrible. So I'm not talking about the Packers winning a game on this podcast the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's the embrace the grind curse.
I debated about talking about the Giants and Eagles game, but the Giants, you don't know what you're going to get from either team based off of injury and coaching. Not that the Eagles have a bad coach. I just don't know how Jason Garrett's going to run that offense.
Eagles also have been very questionable coaching this year too. There's been some mind bogglers that Peterson's done.
And I don't love the pick I ended up going with, especially depending on the certain team's quarterback's health after the rib injuries he dealt with a few weeks ago. But it's also the team they're playing. And I'm taking the Browns at -3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. Just because Cincinnati doesn't really know what they're doing. John Ross just requested a trade. Not that that's such a big deal because he hasn't performed to the level of where they drafted him. But I think the Browns get it together after getting blown out last week, and it's going to be a real tester game. Are we actually contenders to make the playoffs this year and in the AFC North? Or are we pretenders? And are we going to lose after getting destroyed last week? And I had some people asking me why I thought the Browns benched Mayfield. And I don't think it's because of his play. I think it was because of the rib injuries he suffered the previous week. And, I mean, they weren't winning that game. Don't put your already hurting quarterback in more danger. I don't even think Baker probably should have played last week.
Yeah, no, he shouldn't have. And I also, you saw he took a lot of big hits in that game early, and he was getting his ribs. He was getting his ribs evaluated multiple times. He was hurt. It had nothing. Listen, he wasn't playing great. Don't get me wrong. And if you're gonna pull your quarterback, it's not gonna be for Case Keenum. So I don't think it wasn't a performance thing. They weren't winning the game, and he was clearly hurt. So there was really no purpose in keeping him in the game at that point.
So I'm hoping he's back to himself this week, or I might look like I have egg on my face come next Wednesday. Now, Nick, who are your fantasy football players you're looking at? Who are you starting? Who are you sitting? And who are you picking up off the waiver wire this week?
All right. So this week, give me Justin Jackson off the waiver wire. This guy's playing Jacksonville. He played really well against New Orleans before the bye week, but the most important thing I looked at with this matchup is it's a two-man backfield with him and Joshua Kelly. And it's really important to remember that with him and Joshua Kelly, they do split carries, they split receptions, but Jackson gets, really the blunt of it. And last week, Adrian Peterson scored 13 fantasy points, and in the PPR formats, DeAndre Swift scored almost 30 with 27.4. So I definitely would go against these running backs because last week they put up great numbers against Jacksonville, and I definitely would look towards him. Another waiver wire guy I like is Matt Stafford. Again, going back to the Detroit Lions, it's not like I'm not trying to put all my eggs in one basket. However, Matt Stafford is a great player to have this week if you need to stream a quarterback. Your guy's on a bye week. I don't know even what teams have a bye week. I doubt you have Kirk Cousins, but either way, he would be a great start because Atlanta is a very poor secondary, very, very poor. They have one player and it's AJ Terrell, and he can't cover the entire back end of the field. So definitely is that's a quarterback that I would pick up and start and start him, sit him. So start him. Start Chase Claypool until further notice. He is an absolute beast. He's kind of like, he reminds me of Calvin without a bigger body, kind of like a DK sort of guy, not as strong, but he's really, really tall and really, really fast. Like, it's a very rare combination, and they use him in a lot of ways. They run the ball with him. They, reverses, deep routes, short routes, screens, everything. He's all in their offense, and starting him, I'd sit Juju Smith-Schuster. Last week, in personal fantasy game, I was told by many different fantasy sources, you got to start Juju over Claypool. I benched Juju, started Claypool, won my game by 2 points. Juju had 2 receptions for 6 yards. He's somebody that I can't gouge him anymore. I know me and you had questions about Juju being a true number one after Brown left, and I think the answer is clear. He's not a true number one. I think he's going to continue to struggle without having a dominant force on the other side. Now Claypool is becoming dominant. It's a short time. He's still a rookie, so I definitely am going to bench Juju Smith-Schuster this week. I want nothing to do with him.
Brandon Cooks or T. Higgins?
Brandon Cooks or T. Higgins. This one's a little tough, okay? Because that guy, Jair Alexander, he's really good at football, like really good. However, their second string corner, King, he's okay. He's okay. And it seems like Will Fuller is the uncontested number one in Houston. So if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'm shadowing Fuller if I'm going to shadow anybody. T. Higgins is another interesting one because the Browns secondary isn't great. However, we need to be reminded that the Steelers last week, Claypool played really well. Don't get me wrong, and the Steelers ran the ball most of the game against Cleveland's front seven. However, Ben Roethlisberger played very poor with a 10-point fantasy performance. Juju Smith-Schuster, like I said, played very poor with a 2.6-point fantasy point performance. I would be weary on T. Higgins this week, just because I don't know how Cincinnati's going to. I don't know how they're going to look. Now, they look great last week, okay? This might be a recency bias saying start T. Higgins because T. Higgins had this whole great week last week. He had a huge catch. A.J. Green had a great game. Boyd had a solid game. They all played pretty well. But unfortunately, I think it's a really tough call. I would go with Brandon Cooks in hopes of a high-scoring game versus the Packers. However, don't be surprised if they put up similar type numbers. Brandon Cooks is more of a boomer bust kind of guy. He's going to get you either 4 or 30, and T. Higgins kind of gives you a floor of 10. So if you are in a position where you think you're going to feel solid about your matchup or you're projected to win by a good amount, I would take a flyer on Brandon Cooks. However, if you're in a really close matchup in a must-win game, I probably am going to start T. Higgins based on he has a higher floor than Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you on that. I'd probably lean a little more towards T. Higgins. That's also recency bias of some of the massive games he's had in recent weeks, and he seems like he might be one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets in Cincinnati. You also don't know what you're going to get out of the Green Bay Packer defense. Is the only hesitant when it comes to coverage this season. But I want to close the show out on talking about the shirt I'm wearing right here. We are releasing apparel come the first week in November. So if you want to pick this up, our website, where we'll be doing sports articles, talking a little more about fantasy football, talking a little more outside stuff other than just football, aside from the YouTube, that's where you're going to find it. We're looking at the first week in November. I've been talking about possibly doing this for the past few weeks. It's officially set in stone. We're also going to be launching our Patreon that same first week of November. So if you want to help support the channel, keep supporting us through these videos, through these live streams, but also take a look at the apparel. We got some great apparel. Got 2 colors of t-shirts, this color and a black t-shirt. And we got hoodies and crew necks coming, both black and gray, with more to come later on if you guys love the stuff. I tested this shirt out. The shirt actually came in this afternoon, and it's one of the softest shirts I have ever owned. So I'm super excited. I would not put this logo or this brand on anything that wasn't great, because I want you guys to enjoy the stuff as much as I do. And we love the support we're getting. Graham Mertz is doing great, that video, compared to some previous videos. So thank you guys so much for that. We're doing so much better with the podcast now being on this live stream setup. So we appreciate y'all being here for that. And we're just trying to, hey man, I graduate in May. I hope I'm able to do this because I love doing this stuff. And I hope y'all love the content we're producing. I don't want to have to look for a real world job come then. That's the honest thing. I wish I could do this, all this stuff, and not have to release the Patreon or have ads on the videos or have apparel. But unfortunately, the real world involves having money, and this is the stuff that I want to build, and I want to give y'all great content. We got some great things coming with the Patreon in the future, and I might even be looking at some FCS football stuff for the Patreon in the future as well. So get excited for the apparel. It's great. My roommates and I are going to be doing some special stuff leading up to the launch of the apparel. And we're so excited to have you guys here. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you're on the replay, thanks for watching this on the replay. And remember to embrace the grind.